Hey everybody, it's Tripl-L here to talk about My Hero Academia chapter technically 423 and 424. Hey everybody, I hope you're having a great day. So, we're pretty much here at the end, right? If you saw my spoiler video a while back, you would probably know that I felt pretty conflicted. And I still feel pretty conflicted. We're at the end here, so I hope you'll let me take a little bit longer to explain just how I feel ultimately about the ending and just like the weird little things I noticed because I thought about it a lot. I delayed my review of 424 as I just took more time to talk to other people and just see what they were thinking. And as I look at 424, the official translation and all that, I look at it and what I really see when I look at also 423 is, I'm a tiny bit disappointed, but the funny thing is, like, I'm pretty sure I've said that on videos before, and if you're on the live streams, I definitely know that I believe this particular thing. The last 10 chapters of any series is when you're going to see the most rushing. You're going to see weird things happen in those last 10 chapters. I do believe we're in the last 10 chapters. So, like, with that in mind, is it strange that there would be something that could be seen as a deficiency in the last 10 chapters? I don't think so. I think it's pretty obvious something would be very weird. And another thing that I was thinking is when we were talking about like the victory lap for Horikoshi, when he was having everyone contribute to like letting Izuku get to All for One. If you asked me like, okay, from a writing perspective, if you were doing this kind of victory lap, would there be a lot of content after the victory lap sequence? And it's like, well, kind of depends on the series, but I guess not. As a fan, I kind of wanted more. I feel like the final confrontation with All for One and Izuku could have been extended for one more chapter before going into Epilogue. I think that's what I would have preferred. And there's a few critical moments in chapter 423 where I think he could have expanded, and I'll show you exactly where they are because I think you would agree with it too. So as a fan, I would have liked a little bit more, but like I can also see the difficulties with how this was going. And again, I think we're very close to the end here. Like we're already in the epilogue sequence. I still believe 430 is where we're going to end. I think back at 416, I had mentioned that I saw something strange, and I feel like the end is going to be 430. Everyone knows. I've been saying 430 is the ending. I still think that's very correct. Now, if we end up going for 10 more chapters, I think that's just good. That's just good stuff for everyone that loves Hero Academia. Honestly, if Horikoshi thinks he can do 100 chapters of epilogue, I would support him 100%. I don't care if they're like the worst chapters in the world. I would support it. I think he should. Only because I don't want to leave Hero Academia, and I feel like there's, I think you could still enjoy. Look, Hero Academia was only like 1 year of Izuku's life, alright? I think we could enjoy more years of Izuku's life. But yeah, it's bittersweet. We'll have to see how many chapters we're ending. Like I feel if we're gonna get an announcement for how many chapters are left, I feel like this week could be it. If we don't get it this week, I'd be very surprised, and that means we'll probably have more than I expect. Anyway, let's get into it. We'll very quickly talk about 423, and then I'll go into 424, although like honestly 423 is the more important one. It has the more interesting little things because it follows Shigaraki's end here. So with 423, overall, I'm still not 100% in with this whole, like, this body is strange, it isn't using super regeneration, and I'm thinking, like, bruh, you weren't using super regeneration when you were doing finger genesis. Like, Shigaraki fought a whole fight without ever using super regeneration. The man was creating mouths out of nowhere. That wasn't a quirk. So I think it's still strange, the total divorcing from the finger genesis power and a refocus on super regeneration. I think that is extremely strange. Where is finger armor? I feel like Horikoshi had to just nix that power because it would have complicated things too much, and it would have lengthened the chapters. But, there's other little things that were going on. Let me see if I can zoom in on it so you guys can see it too. Like, we saw that something weird was happening with the All for One quirk. Okay, I can't zoom in on it. Like, that quirk has been bleeding for a long time. And, like, usually when you see that, you'd be thinking, like, okay, the All for One quirk is reaching its limits. Fundamentally, it's just... Okay, let me explain it to you. If it was me, I know that this messiness would get me a lot of terrible reviews on Amazon. Like, as a self-published person who does not have that much goodwill to like keep him afloat, when I look at something like the premising of like the point that we did all the biological augmentations, and then to not talk about the biological augmentations at all at the end, and then completely ignore their significance in the fact that they were not a quirk, and we're just not talking about it anymore, that's like very messy. It's very rushed. In a world where you do not have a lot of goodwill because you're like a very small like audience and all that kind of stuff, like that's just not a safe move. Now, mind you, it's also possible I'm misreading something or misremembering, in which case, like, my bad. But off the top of my head, like, this is the kind of thing that would get me like really bad reviews if I was having to replicate something similar to it. Now, again, on the like, this isn't a novel. On the Horikoshi manga publishing side, if we're like ending within 10 chapters, it's 100% understandable why he had to nix that particular power. It's just, like, you spend so much time talking about how Shigaraki's body is groping for the perfect form, and you never really see it. You just see All For One coming back, and then he's just using All For One goal. He's just using his power that he used against Bakugo, right? I think there's a deficiency there, but I think it's probably explained with just the realities of manga publishing in Shonen Jump. Anyway, we continue on from there. The next page of interest was like we had this big thing of all of their danger sense was coming together. They converged and they overwhelmed him, dulling his senses. Now we know like danger sense is overwhelming, but personally, the guy could see Izuku. What does this mean? It's dulling your senses. You're attacking everyone all at once. Do you really need to use danger sense as like a visual metaphor for this? I guess so. So like right here, I think this is a Horikoshiism. Specifically, he's giving significance to the fact that danger sense is inside, and he wants to like say something bigger with it. Personally, again, I think this is unnecessary, and I think it's only happening because like you're kind of like speeding through things very quickly. But like this panel doesn't really, you could nix it and you don't really lose anything of value because he could see Izuku coming right at him, right? Nothing really of value changes other than to say that it was overloading his head. It was overloading the brain of the ultimate being that was able to generate a mouth on its body. Okay, we move on. Let me see. Oh, you can't really get the wording, but I'll just read it for you. One part that I really liked on this page though was when Yoichi and the other user struck me that time, I didn't just feel it in my soul. It's really interesting because it's like Yoichi didn't strike you, he struck Shigaraki. He struck Shigaraki's mind and soul. And it's interesting because like you have that conflation of Shigaraki and All For One, but he's saying that he felt it in his soul, and I guess that's kind of correct. But the imagery there is largely Shigaraki himself. But this is where we come back into the blood thing. He mentions that his body got damaged in that attack too, and I think this is what the second user was going for as well. And then Horikoshi superimposes the image of the blood coming out of his hand there to say that the All For One quirk itself was damaged as well. I think that part's interesting enough. It's just interesting how he's saying who exactly struck here. After that, though, we go into the whole thing about your limbs would pop right off because your body isn't ready for it. And see, like, again, this is where it just gets kind of messy because, like, you're saying, I think his body is ready for it. I think a body that got augmented to be able to naturally pull off All Might level strength. Remember, because that was what Endeavor was fighting against when we were back at the hospital. I think you have to do a lot to be able to justify that it's going to be affected like this. I think if you say like, but okay, it was already weakened, it's like, yeah, sure. I mean, like, that is the reality that Horikoshi is most likely going for. Again, I think a product of the, we're just wrapping up here. So I have this part here just because I like that Sendo was in there, like, it's just funny. But yeah, this is where like Shigaraki's body just starts crumbling because I guess it just can't handle anything anymore. Now we move on. This is like, again, one of those spots that makes me just feel very weird about it. This is really a video about like all the spots that make me feel weird. So with this one, here's how I see it. Horikoshi has a checklist, right? And one of those checklist moments is like Kurogiri has to like live up to what he's all about, and that is, like as President Mike says, reach out to those in need. The thing is, like, it's sandwiched in there, and then Kurogiri pretty much dies. He fails. Like, that's such a powerful statement too. He's trying to protect Shigaraki and he utterly fails. This isn't an evil person at this point. This is a good person trying to protect essentially a child. So this is one of those parts where I really hope that, since Class 2A wasn't able to get anything here, I do hope in the epilogue chapters, if we get more than 2, I hope we see Aizawa and that class just talking and maybe just get a little bit of resolution there. Just because this is brutal. This is absolutely brutal. If it really does feel like a checklist of Horikoshi just going in there and putting in. Also, you know, the way this is looking, it doesn't look like the heroes lost anything in this war. If we lost any heroes, they're probably no names. And it's just so interesting that it's the main villains that got the roughest end of the stick. And I think I mentioned this maybe in the last video, and I mentioned it maybe on a live stream, but I really wonder if Horikoshi was just like, okay, you know, there need to be stakes. People like the villains, so I'll just get rid of the villains, and then I don't have to touch the heroes that matter. I really do wonder if that was his mentality going into this. I feel so bad for the villains, man. They just got like, poof, it was rough. Absolutely rough. The poor man over here is begging to get Shigaraki back, and he just fizzles out because Bakugo comes out of nowhere to blast him. Okay, so here we go into, like, now we're going to start talking about the parts that definitely got rushed a little bit. For Bakugo, though, I will say we got to see Bakugo here, so the only person that really missed out here was Ochako. It looks like Horikoshi's miracle powers, we just couldn't go that far. Horikoshi's miracle powers did not allow us to get Ochako, but we got 3 out of 4. All cool stuff, you know, appreciate that. Now, with this one, this is like kind of representative of like what I think would have been very good with Izuku and All For One. I think it's very odd that Izuku never got to see All For One in his proper face, the face that Yoichi knew. The closest he got was when All For One was approaching with All Might, but he never got to interact with him. He's always just seeing All For One as an extension of Shigaraki. And I think that's just really unfortunate. It really makes things feel incomplete. Now, when you're doing this here, if we had one more chapter, what I kind of would have done here is like this starts Vestige World as Horikoshi did it, but maybe Izuku facing All For One kind of Vestige World. Now, for me personally, I feel that the sequence with All For One admitting that he loves Yoichi, and Yoichi saying like, yo bro, like it's over. I'm pretty happy with that. I think that worked pretty well. Like in my bingo card, I thought that, yeah, you know, All For One is gonna, like, it's Yoichi's gonna take All For One out with him. Like, they're gonna disappear together, and that's essentially what you got work going on there. So like overall, I see that as something that really worked. Now, when we look here very quickly, I appreciate how stubborn Horikoshi is and how devoted he is to some things. Because if you look here, you see that you have second user, third user, Nana, you have Banjo, and you have N. There are a few missing people. You don't have Yoichi, you don't have fourth user, and you don't have All Might. Now, the All Might Vestige is a really weird one. I'm actually kind of hoping that the All Might Vestige stayed with Izuku, or it went back to Izuku. That way, Izuku will always have All Might in there, so he has the power of 2 people at the very least. At least it gives him something. I really hope the embers that he talks about in 424 are actually All Might. Anyway, the significance of not having the 4th user there, it makes sense. The 4th user is part of the All For One power package, not the One For All power package. He couldn't free himself from All For One. That's why you have just those users coming in with Tomura in there. Now we go into this where Shigaraki's explaining why he never disappeared, and it's pretty much, well, after Monster swallowed me up, it was his grandmother that went in there and made sure he was alive still. And this just goes back to what I was saying on the previous videos, that it doesn't matter. Horikoshi's going to set one thing up and then he's just going to be like, yes, he would have died, but this thing happened. So that's what you got here. Now, if we're going to improve shit, this is one of the things I would have improved. This sequence of like, you made sure that I wouldn't disappear, I think Horikoshi could have done something really amazing, because he's really good at juggling multiple characters. Could have done something really amazing here, and have, as Izuku is fighting, we see shots of the Vestige, or sorry, the Pass 1 for all users also working on something inside of Shigaraki. Heck, maybe we could do a whole move over to them, and we can see them finding little Tenko wandering in the city, because that's really good imagery, and have them reach out to him. Like, think about it. Like, the big thing that set Tenko on this path is that no one reached out to him on that fateful day. He even says that things could have gone differently if someone reached out to him on that day. So that would have been, like, in terms of the thematics for the series, that would have worked. It would have made sense with the story that you got before, and it wouldn't have made this critical moment be something off screen that just had to be rushed through. Again, if we're ending at 4:30, this makes sense for why we had to speed through it, but we'll have to see. Only the future will tell. Anyway, this is where you probably could have gotten that extra chapter to really make that work and just make this feel a little bit more impactful. The thing when you have, like, when you're speeding through things, like, you shoved Kurogiri's death into here and you have to do all these little things very quickly. When you have this going very quick, when you have it like paced like this, it just makes every moment seem light. It doesn't give it the gravitas that it kind of needs, so that's a little bit unfortunate. But again, endings usually lack gravitas because a lot of times they're rushed because of, in this case, Horikoshi isn't very good at gauging how much chapters he has left. We've seen this about him throughout the years. He probably wasn't able to gauge the chapters to get a good sense of how much chapters he could afford to spend on the battles. Anyway, you have a very quick chat that is elaborated on in chapter 424. Essentially Shigaraki doubling down, and that I actually do respect for Horikoshi. He actually went for it and he doubled down on it hardcore. One thing here is that Izuku ultimately opts to kill All For One, or just opts to go all out on All For One, and in that sense I kind of wish there was more talking about Izuku and making his decision to wipe out All For One and taking Tenko with it. I do personally still hope that a Tenko baby was somehow formed and Tenko is maybe somewhere Toga or something. Like, I don't know. I'm hoping for a very kind epilogue for sure. I'm hoping for a really kind epilogue. Now, apologies for having the picture from 423 on the screen still. My internet just died, so I don't have the pictures available. For 424, the thing that I find most significant about it is that it's the epilogue. That's the most surprising thing about it. In terms of the first section, we get to see Koichi from Vigilantes. I have yet to see the Zoo character, the Zoo series, so I don't know if they were in there somewhere else. Anyway, the first section is the International Heroes response. They showed up a little bit too late if you ask me, but they helped probably with like putting away the remaining villains, and they helped out with like cleaning up. I actually like the overall notion that everything's going to go back to normal within a few weeks. We get to praise the power of the supernatural. So the International Heroes, I think that's just a lot of fan service. Nothing really important on that one. We go into the next section, which is Bakugo's section. We find out Bakugo is not going to be able to use his arm. Now Eri is still, or like it's going to take a while for him to use his arm. He has to like do proper rehab and all that kind of stuff. In that section, I do wonder about Eri. She lopped off her horn, but that horn has always been growing in size from being super giant to like super small. I do wonder if she'll just be able to grow it back properly. If not, that's an interesting way to remove her out of the equation. But you also have Overhaul, but then again, Overhaul can't use his quirk anymore. So you kind of need Eri to repair Overhaul before he can do any other repairs. Oh, and speaking of that, I feel like Overhaul is one of those characters that I think could probably benefit from some epilogue coverage. Anyway, the Bakugo Izuku moment is just a really nice moment for Bakugo's character. You know what? Personally, I don't have any problem with the epilogue's pacing, or the first epilogue chapter's pacing, because this is pretty good for the start of an epilogue. So that section doesn't really have any kind of critical response for me. I think there's a lot of emotional resolution there, and I would say that's actually probably a really good example of what you should do when it comes to those kind of characters. And heck, having All Might survive and being there to tell them like, hey, you guys are my heroes. No, there is even like the little panel of Bakugo's parents standing outside of the room, and Bakugo's crying about how he thought him and Izuku would be competing for the rest of eternity here. Very good. I have nothing bad to say to that. Again, I think that's probably a really good example of emotional resolution. Moving on from there, like not much else in the chapter. The most interesting part after that, I don't really care for Shigaraki's extended explanation to Izuku. You know, the fact that that extended explanation had to be put into into 424 does make me again feel like 423 was like very brisk in general. But the next big part that I thought was really interesting is that in one of the final pages you have a shot of Ochako, Shoto, and in the middle shells. But now I agree with the commenter White Despair that this is probably Spinner's scales. So when you put Spinner's scales in there in between Ochako and Shoto, what that says to me is that those panels are not about those two characters, they're about the League of Villains. Dobby is associated to Shoto and Toga is associated to Uraraka, and then Spinner has no one, so that's why it's just his scales. That's like what's left of the League of Villains. It's just the people that remember them at that point. And in Spinner's case, his scales. It's also possible Spinner might come in to be like a last hurrah kind of villain, just do like a final little thing there. But as we go into the next epilogue chapters, if there's anything I'm looking for, it's like significance into that panel. That panel is probably the most artistic one in chapter 424. At the end of 424, we see Izuku going into school and it's being rebuilt. Ira and Kaminari are in that shot as well. Now, with that final shot, I know people like made fun of Izuku's hairstyle for that, but it's like, I'm pretty sure that guy probably got like brain surgery or something. Like, probably got like some tinkering going on there. I think the damage depiction is really good. I'm wondering if we're actually going to time skip. I don't know if we're just going to pick up next chapter where we left off. It's weird. I don't know how Horikoshi wants to do this. In his author message, he mentioned that storytelling convention says that endings are usually very brisk, and in that case he is correct. Like, but this is from a literature point of view. When you're writing a novel, an ending usually is very fast because a lot of things got done. I think it's a little bit different when you have like a really nice audience and you can afford to continue writing epilogues, in which case, like, I'm personally of the belief that if you can do 20 volumes of epilogue, you should do it. Just because that's how I feel about stories. I like seeing what people are after the dramatic arc is over. But he's very correct. But he's going to give Hero Academia more epilogue. And he said he's going back to the title My Hero Academia. So we're probably just going to see a little bit more here. It's going to be interesting because if you follow this channel a lot, you know we've talked before about the fact that Shonen Jump series usually cover one full year. And then second year gets super rushed because the manga is fizzling out. In Horikoshi's case, it's going to be interesting to see what he does about second year and third year. And the reason it's going to be interesting is because he's going to be, if he does nothing about second year and third year, we just jump to the ending, he's pretty much following the trends that have come before him. And he continues the curse of no Shonen Jump series is able to ever depict the full 3 years of high school if it's a battle shonen. So, you know, we talked about this on a discussion, but Hero Academia is going to be setting a standard for subsequent school-based battle shonens. It's going to be really interesting to see what exactly they want to do. What do I think is going to happen in the final chapters? Well, I think we're ending at 4:30. I'm hoping that Izuku gets to keep All Might's Vestige, and I really just want Izuku to keep Black Whip in there, man. Like, let him keep Black Whip. Yeah, you know, it'd be nice if Tenko somehow survived. It'd be good to see where Toga's at. She's probably just gonna be in hiding for the rest of her life. Is Spinner gonna freak out and have one last rampage? I don't know. Yeah, we're at the end here. Don't know. Guys, let me know what you thought down below. Let me know what your final hopes for the epilogue of Hero Academia are. One thing I think is also very possible is that Hero Academia's story continues in movies, just because movies are profitable nowadays for anime. Yeah, I think if they give Izuku like a sidekick every movie who's male, I think people will eat that up. So we could just see a continuation of Hero Academia like that. Yeah, we'll have to see. Anyway, this is the era of anime-led continuations. So maybe that's something that's going to be in the future of Hero Academia. Izuku says that though, like his story ain't really over just yet because things still going down. Guys, let me know what you thought down below, and till next time, I hope you have an absolutely great day.